Hi, this is Jenny Jones, your host of the Black Business Podcast. And for episode 2, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Miss Shanae Jackson, and I want you to hear what she has to say. She has a lot of sage advice for young entrepreneurs. She also has advice for businesses trying to go to the next level and trying to establish themselves online. And she also has some information for purchasers who's going to be purchasing products and using their black dollars in the black community. So she had a lot of things to share, and I was so glad she found time in her busy schedule to meet with me. So for no further ado, I want to go ahead and let you listen in on what we talked about on episode 2 of the Black Business Podcast. Thank you. Hello, it's great to be with you today. I'm Jenny Jones, and joining me today is Sharnae Jackson from Elk Grove, California. And on today's show is brought to you by the $5 Marketing Garage. And I'm excited to hear what this young lady has to say here on the Black Business Podcast today, where we connect entrepreneurs, small businesses, and we connect consumers to help them spend their black dollars in the right places. Now, Sharnae, I'm sorry, Sharnae, I be wanting to say Sharnice, I don't know why. I've been knowing you.
As long as I have known you, you keep throwing an R in there. There's no R.
I have known this lady for so long. You guys have no idea. We're not going to get into that because it's not what this show is about today. But what I want her to do, I know she's working on a special project. We're going to have her share that a little bit later, but I can't wait to hear about that. I think you've been sending out some sprinkles on your social media and stuff like that. So I want to hear a good detail on what's going on with that. And you're going to be for a treat for that. So stick around for that. But without further ado, Sharnae, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate what you're doing with your podcasts and your Facebook page and how you're connecting Black-owned businesses together and just heightening up their awareness. Thank you for being a catalyst in that field. Appreciate you for that.
You know what? I appreciate it. You know me, I'm always trying to push entrepreneurship. That's in my blood. And so I took a look at your website, and I want to make sure I get it correct. It's SharnaeJackson.com.
Yeah, it is. It is Shanae.
Oh, Shanae.
That's just you keep throwing an R. It's Shanae Jackson.
Shanae Jackson. You want to spell that out for our listeners and viewers?
Yes, it's C as in Charlie, H as in hot, E as in everything, R as in running, N as in negotiation, E as in everything, Y as in yodel, Jackson, like Andrew Jackson, which should be Harriet Tubman on that 20, but Andrew's still on the 20.
Well, that's another podcast.
Right?
No, so I appreciate you joining me here today. And so listen, what I'm going to do, what we're going to start doing is kind of putting all of the business owners not on the spot, not on the hot seat, but let's imagine, if you will, if we got on the elevator and we know there's like 40 floors, but you're going to the 27th floor, I'm going to the 27th floor. We get on the elevator and I'm going to ask you, hey, Sharnae, Shanae, hey, Shanae, can you tell me a little bit about your business, what you do?
Sure. Well, CJ Sewing Co. is a business that teaches fashion. That's what we do. We teach fashion through 3 different ways: by clothing repair, clothing alterations, and classes. Specifically, what happens is in this society, because most individuals at a certain age, they don't get the training that you and I had in learning how to dress. Perhaps if you're older than probably 40, you had a mother or grandmother, you went to church, which really gave you a parameter how to put your clothing together. Well, now we have these 30-something who've watched Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, and they don't really know about putting a wardrobe or their clothes together. And that's where I come in. So when they come into my shop and they want to get fitted, I come in and I really explain the fundamentals of being the well-dressed individual and really trying to help them perfect their style. Also, I teach classes as well.
Okay, yeah. So no, we'll get to that. We'll get to the classes. I visited your website and tell me a little bit, because sounds like there's some family history or something. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure, right? Who would have thought? Oh my gosh. So the reality is, when I know we're going to talk about classes later, but this will give you the backdrop. So when I grew up, I grew up in a culture where, first of all, you did not negotiate with your parents. If your parents told you to do something, it wasn't like, well, how are you feeling about it? Do you really want to do it? So my parents taught me how to sew. And I started sewing when I was 7. So my mom sewed, and actually my dad did too. My
Okay.
grandmothers, both of my grandmothers, my paternal and my maternal grandmother sewed. My paternal grandmother worked in the garment industry in San Francisco, and she did piecework.
Okay.
Piecework is some grueling work, meaning that you don't get paid by the hour, you get paid by the piece, and the piece has to be accepted when you
Oh,
complete it. Right, piece work. And then
okay.
my great grandmother on my mother's side was a tailor. So it was like the
Okay.
family business, really.
Wow. Okay. So you're giving us
Right,
some history. Now, peace, I wasn't familiar with that. I'm not a sewer. What I
right,
do remember, and you are correct, I do remember home economics, which was one of the inspirations behind me creating my academy. But this is about
right.
you. But what I'm trying to say is how they're all connected, because those are the elements that we're missing in today's
Oh,
um,
hands down.
all the electives that we used to have in school, which
Gosh.
made us who we are. Actually, I think the electives helped us to be, I think most of us to be better entrepreneurs, because with electives, you had an opportunity to pursue something that you really wanted to do, whether it was cooking. And I do remember the sewing class. I tried to avoid that by any means necessary,
Right.
but I do know how to put a bow. I do know how to put a button on. So
Well,
I'm gonna
you're
just be
ahead
straight
of the game. But
up.
let me just speak to the electives. They weren't just
Yeah.
electives, they were more like life skills, right? Because now you
Yes.
have these college graduates who can't function outside of work. I mean,
Right.
can they boil hot water, uh, make a simple dish, or even like what you're teaching, financial awareness, all of that somehow is missing. And I think those fundamental classes that we looked at as electives were actually helping you build life skills to keep you in the future.
I agree. I agree totally. So I think that's a good segue for us to kind of transition into. Tell us how. So let me get this straight. So you say so people come to you for fashion, and then I know they come to you for alterations,
Sure.
but then you have this class element. Tell us how that's working out, and then kind of tell us how it's kind of changed because of COVID-19. So just tell us
Sure.
how you got to the classes. Tell us about that, and tell us a little bit
Sure.
more about it.
Sure. So initially, when I first started my business, I taught sewing. That I thought was going to be the fundamentals of my business. But as I was teaching sewing, I was doing alterations because as you know, in business, you have to have a marketing mix. You don't want your eggs to be all in one particular product, because if that product goes south,
You
you
need
in
to
a
say that
situation
again for the young, aspiring
for the
entrepreneurs out
situation.
there.
So you better have a good marketing mix and a very good product line. So I started teaching sewing, and actually it was a dry hustle. Just to give you a little bit more intel on who I am as an entrepreneur, I worked in corporate. I worked in construction actually for 15 years. Was
Okay.
very successful. And when 2008 came, I was corrected like so many other professional construction professionals, because there was just no
Wow.
work. There was no
Right.
work
Right.
outside of civil work. And the only reason why it's civil is road bridge work, was because President Obama gave the stimulus package that allowed for the roads to continue to be worked on. But if you were
Gotcha.
doing building work like I was doing, there was no work. There was no state work. There was no federal work. There was no private work. And so I
Wow.
was laid off. And so I had to recreate myself. If you are into reading, there's a book by T.D. Jakes that's called Repositioning Yourself. So I had to figure out my repositioning
Okay.
in the market. And I did a bunch of different odd situations. In the last job I was on, and let me just say, I am a woman of faith. The
Okay.
last job I was on
Hmm.
was horrible. It was just like dating, but a bad relationship.
Right.
And God had told me that if I would have listened to him at the beginning of the year, I would have never been in this job.
Okay.
So this woman, the person who I reported to, let me go or fired me 3 days before Christmas.
Oh,
I was in
okay.
2012. And then I was like, God's like, well, if you would have listened to me, you would have never been in this position. And so that's when I started my business. And I started
Okay.
teaching. And I was like, this whole teaching situation is it's not financially rewarding. And then he said, you're looking at it from a different way. So what I did is I cold called quite a few private schools, and I would take all my sewing machines over there and I would teach at their facility.
Wait,
My
so let me back this up. So let's
Sure,
talk about a couple of things here. You
sure.
cold called?
Oh, cold call in a heartbeat.
So,
Yes.
I mean, so that's old school because that's where I think a lot of people think it's instant mix, right? If I can make everybody follow me on
Mm,
Instagram, then I'll be a
mm,
success.
mm, mm.
You're not some of these celebrities out here that have that mix. So you're saying you cold called. This is how you started your business. You say you cold called,
I
and
sure
so
did.
and how did that work out?
So what would happen is,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was still during the recession to a certain degree. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
market hasn't come back full,
Right.
and I'm just going to say, I my position was that hour from 3 to 6. Most parents whose children are school age are trying to figure out where they're going to put Johnny or Sally after
Gotcha.
school.
Gotcha. Okay, I
And
like that.
so
I like that.
I figured, okay, well, my sewing class would be a great place for Johnny or Sally to be placed. And at this time, the market is coming back, and I'm like, well, who has disposable income? Private schools. Those parents were not. If you could afford to put Johnny in a private school, you could afford my sewing class. And so my pitch was this, because there's a misnomer that says, oh, sewing is so domesticated, because you look on, this is before the blow up of Project Runway and all these other fashion shows. But historically, people think sewing is a poor skill. I'm like, no, you're sleeping on the ideal here, because
Right,
sewing
right.
is actually a form of engineering. The same
Got it.
skill
You're right.
set that I used in construction for 15 years, I didn't go to school for to be a construction manager or project manager. My degree is in advertising and marketing, but because I grew up sewing, I had the fundamentals already. So people who went to college,
Wow.
I was already ahead of some of the processing that they had to learn. So I just took that
Wow.
skill and conformed it to the field I was working with in construction. I was very successful in construction.
Wow.
So
So,
when I taught sewing,
uh-huh.
I that was my, as you say, my unique selling proposition for my parents, was that if they could learn how to sew, they could easily move into interior design, into construction management, into architecture, into clothing design, because we all use the same fundamental skills.
Wow. So what I'm gathering from you, man, you said a mouthful there, and our show is geared towards three demographics, right? We're working with entrepreneurs. We want them to try to get it because there's a lot of people that says, "Hey, I want to go for business myself." Oh, do
Mm.
you know what it takes to go into business for yourself? So this show is
Right.
one. This show is one that's going to come with people with sage advice like yourself
Sure.
and kind of tell us some of these pitfalls and different things to avoid. And second, it's for the actual business owner that's actually out there running a business. What idea can I glean from Shanae Jackson to
That's good.
add or enhance my business? And then it's for
Sure.
consumers who want to spend Black dollars, and
Sure.
we want to be able to have them locate you where you are. And
Sure.
I want to make this quick point before we start transitioning to trying to hear about the classes,
Sure.
because man, I can't wait to hear more about that. But what we are doing, and we're probably near completion, probably will be done in the next, I guess, 3 days or so, is we have a store, and you're going to be able to get that from um, it's shop
Mhm.
blackbusinesspodcast.com. From there, all of our guests will be in there. All of our guests will be located there. They'll have their episode in there as well as on our podcast and on YouTube as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to showcase you in there after the show. We're going to have a link to that. So everyone that comes on the show is going to go into our shop store. So we're going to have a massive shop store. So if I missed the episode, if I missed episode 3 and then you're on episode 70 now, but they talked about sewing and fashion, I want you to
Mhm.
go to the store and I'll be able to see that. And I'll be able to connect directly with Shanae Jackson from there. So I just wanted to get this point and wanted to make sure I have that, because for consumers, they're going to want one stop and want to make sure that they can find out wherever they want to do, or they want to spend all their dollars, they can figure out what areas that they want to spend them in from our shop, blackbusinesspodcast.com. That's coming. I think we're maybe
Mhm.
48 hours away from launching that. So I just wanted to share that with you. So now,
Mhm.
I want to hear a little bit more. So you transitioned, you said you did some cold calling
I
and
sure
the
did.
teaching. Yeah, you hustling, did some teaching, but now, so we had COVID, we had to kind of take us through that, and let's kind of wrap up to what we got on this class thing, because I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about
Sure.
that.
So just so I start So anybody who's trying to make some income on a
Uh,
quick way here, you need to get hooked up into those homeschool co-ops because you don't have to have a
ooh,
teaching credential to do it. If you have a skill set and you make the connection, you can market your class to those individuals. And those parents are
man,
looking for someone to teach their students. You are that elective. And check it out. The parents don't pay. It's the school district or the co-op that gets paid. You just build a co-op.
man, you just dropped that is you just increased somebody's sales right there
Obviously.
because
And
it.
it's
Oh
pulling
my
down the
goodness,
paperwork, doing the yes.
I need to let my son. I'm not gonna say I made him switch his major, but I told him I say, listen, son. And the only reason why I bring it up is because you said it. You just solidified it. I said, son, you need to get a skill. I said, I
Oh,
don't care. I
yeah,
said, you ain't got to have a job, but if you got a skill, you can make work, right?
right.
And I just told him. So he switched his major. He turned his major into a minor and started picking up a skill in videography and
Great.
production and stuff like that. But he was
Yes.
really trying to, I'm gonna do this, and I'm like, son, listen. But I laid out these parameters for him. This show is not about me. I'm just trying to back up your point
Sure.
in what you
Right.
said, in the fact that you need to have a skill. So what you're saying is, if you take your skill
Oh yeah.
to these co-ops, they'll say, yeah, we'll bring you on, we'll hire you.
All
Make
day,
sure you got to have
every
your
day.
rates, you got to have your proposals, you got to have all your stuff together. And we'll
All,
talk about that in other shows, but go ahead.
every day, all day, every day. So what has happened is
I love
this.
it.
My business was booming, booming. I've been in business for 8 years, and
Right.
a large portion of my business is weddings. And when the
Okay. Yeah, I
COVID
remember that.
hit, that dried my source up in a big way, right?
Man, look at you. I'm
So,
impressed. Go ahead. Go ahead.
so I thought, thinking out the box. So what I did is I made masks for a quick moment before everybody, and their grandmama, and their mama, their brother, their little brother, their cousin started making masks. Enough to carry me over, but it gave me a chance to think about a different strategy and pivot. So what I did is I've taught before, so I took my classes online. So now I have a
Yes.
virtual sewing class. And so I've had classes in June, I've had classes July, but the June and July classes were just the runway to get me prepared for the fall. Because what I have gone
Okay.
and did is connect with 5 different homeschool co-ops. They're all
Man.
individual. So it's like having a strong
Man.
client base. And all I have to
Yeah.
do is position myself well enough with the homeschool co-ops. They have a directory, and those parents choose classes from that directory.
Wow.
So
Wow.
online, because this is the reality. And I know that we're all thinking, I don't know what a lot of people are thinking, but I'm like, you got to think strategy, and you got to think long term. Long, you want your money to be long. And with with
You
with
sound
the
like me.
with the uncertainty of the market,
Right.
there is no guarantee that we'll get to what we know as normal, as being back to face. And I don't know about you, but come the fall, if so and so got sniffles, they can't come up in here, right?
Right.
And
Right.
even if my children are adults, but even if they were younger children, I would still be concerned about putting them in a classroom environment, because I don't know what those students
Wow.
been with, who they've been with, and I don't want my health compromised, nor did I want their. So the ability to teach online and do distance learning is
Right.
such
Right.
going to be a new frontier. And if you can translate whatever your skill set is to a virtual classroom, you're
Right.
ahead of the curve already.
Wow. So let me ask you this. So when you
Yeah.
say classroom, so are you talking about now? Are these video? Are these live classrooms? Are these pre-recorded? Or tell me a little bit more about that.
So I chose not to do pre-recorded because you could charge more of a premium. And there's
Okay.
events, there are pluses and deltas to both sides. A
Okay. Got it.
pre-recording is one thing, but there's no interaction.
Got it.
And
Got it.
I'm not going to pay premium to watch your video. I can go on YouTube and do that. But to be able
That's
to
true.
create
That's true.
create my own curriculum, that's my stuff. You have to get
Right.
that from me. To create my own curriculum and be on demand live, I can charge a premium for that.
Oh wow, and that's a very good point. Now you could, I mean, and that's your choice that you made. You says, hey, listen, I'd rather be premium and go live and schedule my classes. Because here's the thing, you ain't doing nothing else in a pandemic, right? But setting up classes. Oh, I
Yeah,
love it. Here's what I love most about what you've done, Charnay, is I've known you
I know.
for, I know, at least maybe 15 plus years, right?
The rat
I,
race, right? During the
I
rat
have,
race.
yeah, I haven't even did the numbers on that. And you have impressed me by your ability to adapt, adjust, and overcome. And I use that a lot because I learned that as a young, when I was a young soldier in the military, they would always say that. All of the drill sergeants said the thing, you need to learn how to adapt, adjust, and overcome.
Right.
Can't get defeated. Look how many things you've ran up against. You've ran up against the recession of the construction,
Sure.
right? You've ran up against a layoff. And had you been listening to me before in financial, all the layoffs happen in December because they're structuring for the first quarter of the
Sure.
next year, and they're
Sure.
looking at budgets, and that's when budgets are due. So a lot of your layoffs went, oh, that's another podcast. But listen, I love the fact that you've been able to pivot and you've been able to be creative. This is what we need. As you, as a young entrepreneur out there trying to figure it out, you have to know one thing. You have to be able to, once one door is closed, another one opens. And you have to have vision in your business. And one thing I will say before I let you come back on here again and share us a little bit as we kind of close it and take it to a close is, one thing I learned as being an entrepreneur for, almost 25 years, probably longer if I count when I first got it, the bug, is you have to constantly evolve. I'd say every 2 years
100%.
minimum.
100%.
Do you agree with
100%.
that? Because I was thinking that to myself.
100%. 100%.
Wow.
I had this. It's not even 2 years because you're going to evolve as the market changes.
Right. You're going to adapt.
Whatever the market needs is where you're going to evolve in. So
Yes. Yes.
is the thing that my own experience, and I don't know about you, but I remember I was telling this to my future entrepreneur, my children. I was saying, I remember when the cell phone came out, and I thought, okay, that's a good tool, right? I mean,
Right.
we went to our cell phone, but when they put the camera on the cell phone, I thought, who's going to buy that?
Wow.
And look at us. Now every phone. I was like, huh. And then I remember when Amazon came out, and I was like, who's going to shop on Amazon? But the lesson in that is, for me, was you have to have a long vision.
Yes.
And you have to be able to pivot. If you're
Yes.
only looking at what's current today, you're going to be irrelevant tomorrow.
Wow.
And there is such you look at all of the companies who you thought were going to handle it. Nokia is no longer there. Borders is no longer there. All these companies that did not know how to pivot in the market.
Wow.
So you have to stay on your game. And that's not waiting for someone. It's your responsibility as an entrepreneur to keep the tap on what the market is bearing. That is
Ms.
being
Jackson.
day.
Are people getting these nuggets, Ms. Jackson? Are they getting
Every
these
day.
nuggets?
Every day.
Wow. Okay, so listen, as we're kind of bringing it to a close a little bit, but is there anything? I mean, you've just gave us a whole bunch right there. Now, can you tell us the direction with this pandemic thing going on? Yeah, everything's moving to online and different things like that. And can you give us any tips on moving to online? Now I want to take my business. I'm an offline business. I just listened to Miss Jackson say, hey man, I had to pivot. I had to get my resources lined up. I had to get someone to build out my infrastructure, my website, and all these things. Can you give us any tips? Don't give us the bad yet. That's a whole other segment. Kind of give us some tips in if you had to do again, or hey, I would watch out for these things as I'm transitioning online. Give us some good stuff there. Give us some good juice there.
Okay, so a couple of things is, if you're not online, you have to have a plan. And when you say you're like, I don't have a website. You can't do it all yourself. You have to have a team, and your team has to perform. Like my website, I did not do my website. I know people are like, oh, you could do your website, but you have to figure out what the cost is versus the time and what you're worth. If that is not your expertise, don't spend another 60 hours. But let me say, on the other flip side of that, you got to know what you're buying. right?
True.
You have
True.
to be very involved in that process.
Right.
Number one,
Right.
you have to create an online presence, because what happens if someone's searching for you, you want them to find you. And you
Right.
can't be halfing like, okay, because I just believe the whole distance learning and where we're going, we're it's not going to be such physical contact on a lot of the businesses that we once thought. Just like people working from home, right? That's a
Right.
whole nother element that we never thought would exist.
Right.
So going online is, you have to have a plan, and you have to be very specific. You have to know your USP, your unique selling proposition, because people want to know what's going
She
to
is
differentiate you.
dropping. Listen, hey, Miss Jackson, background in marketing, such as myself, we know, we get it. You need to be in reinventing yourself. So you're giving us these tips, these sage advice pieces, man. So listen.
Hmm.
So if we want to know more about Charnay and your now, what do you call yourself? The fashion? What is it? I went to your website.
I
What is that
said,
called?
oh, the fashion connoisseur.
The fact, if you want to know more about the fashion connoisseur,
Well,
right? You can
okay.
find her now. Do you have some Instagrams, or do you want
I
to
have
throw
an
out any tags so
Instagram.
people should follow you, or what? What's going on?
Yes, I have an Instagram. I have a Facebook, and I do have a website. I have a Facebook page, not a personal. I have a personal page, but I also have my Facebook page, and that's where I usually
Okay.
post my class information.
Okay.
Yes, the fashion connoisseur. Oh, so this is one more thing I want to just really encourage you to do, is to
Sure.
buy a domain. If you're going online, you need to buy a domain. And I'm sure Jenny Jones will tell you what that's about. But buy your name.
Ah, interesting.
So my
Yeah.
website is the Fashion Connoisseur, but it's under Shanae Jackson because I own that. That's my name.
Right.
Because the beauty of that is when my business changes, it could be Shanae Jackson
Tell
Extraordinary,
them.
but
I
I
learned that a
own my
long time
name,
ago. You own your
right?
name. Boy, y'all is getting some nuggets here. So now,
Because
go
but
ahead.
that's
You
where you
were you
can
gonna say
find me.
something?
So my Instagram is CJ aka Sewing Girl, and it's girl GURL. My Facebook page is CJ Sewing Co. And then my website is under ShanaeJackson.com.
Wow. So what we're going to do is when we put you on Shop Black Business podcast, we're going to list some of your tags so people can find you there if they
That's
need to find you there as well.
sure.
So anything, just in case if you're listening to this episode and we've recorded it like a couple of months prior, you're going to be able to find Miss Jackson and all of her information on our website as well, the Shop Black Business podcast. You're going to find all of her information there. You're going to find her tags, different things like that. You're going to have a little short bio on what she does and her expertise. I'm excited for you. And the funny thing about it is most of these listeners, most of these viewers don't know you like I do. And I'm
Uh,
just so proud of you.
thank
Really quick story.
you.
And I may edit this out, I may not, but Miss Jackson and I connected on playing Robert Kiyosaki's game,
The rat.
Cash Flow.
Getting out the rat.
And
Yes.
when I first linked up with her, we said, hey, who all wants to play this game? I went to her house. We played the game with a couple other friends.
Yeah.
I know we played it for like, I want to say 6 hours. It
Yes.
was a long time. But here was the thing. We were playing with all entrepreneurs. So it had to be about 6 of us, and we played it for 6 hours. No one really wanted to lose, but the game allowed us the ability to create and keep going. It taught us about balance sheets. It taught us about creating cash flow, passive income.
Yes.
So that was
Know
a one
your
game.
numbers.
Know your numbers. That is a whole nother podcast.
Nother episode.
That's a whole nother
Whole
hour.
nother
Know your numbers.
Woo!
If we could say nothing else, know your numbers,
Know
right?
your numbers. Yes.
Yes, man, I'm gonna have to do a segment on that one. So we are gonna do a segment on that one. But listen, Miss Jackson, is there anything you want to leave our listeners and our viewers with? Are expiring anything for consumers, Black consumers spending Black dollars, or anything for entrepreneurs, or anything for business owners ready to go to the next level? That's what we'd want to do here. And I'll call this will be our how do you win when it seems like you're losing moment.
Oh my goodness. So there's a few things. As far as my consumers, whoever you hire professionally in whatever realm you're asking, if you hire an attorney, if you're hiring a accountant, a financial planner, a painter, demand excellence and don't be afraid to fire them if they're not producing.
Wow. Okay.
Right? It'll save you headaches in the long run. And
Okay.
sometimes the cheapest is not the best value. That's a whole nother situation. For my aspiring entrepreneurs, you got to have a runway. You have to know your burn rate. You can't hang up a shingle and expect a profit tomorrow.
Wow.
You got to have a burn rate. So that means you might need some other resources to fund your process until you're able to make that balance sheet on the plus side. For my business people,
trying to go to the next level.
You got to network. You got to network up. And sometimes your constituents or where you are, you're only going to go as high as their vision. And sometimes you have to break the mold and do what's uncomfortable and level up to people who don't necessarily look like you, but they have the value and the connections to where you want to go. And don't be afraid of that. If you're at the table, you deserve to be at the table.
Wow. Man, Ms. Jackson, I appreciate you joining us here on the Black Business Podcast. We're trying to connect everybody, and what we're doing is we have a lot of people says, "Hey, I want to spend Black dollars. I want to spend Black dollars." On my show, we're going to bring people on. We're going to vet them as much as we can, right? We don't know all these people. We can vet them from their public appearance. We can vet them from the return of the phone calls to our station.
Absolutely.
Things of that nature. And we can vet them just online. And if they're a good business, we want you to explore them if you need their services or you want to add their services to what you're doing. But we're going to be bringing on professionalism. We're not going to be messing around with Ray and Pookie them doing Cash App Me, Venmo. We're not doing that. That's not what this show is about. This show is about taking your business to the next level. Or if it's for a young entrepreneur wanting or aspiring to be professional, because our dollars, right? We want people to spend Black dollars with us, right? But we need to provide a level of excellence comes with that. To whom much is given, much will be required.
So there it is.
Go ahead.
There it is. And I know we're wrapping up.
Yes.
But that's what I've learned in being in business is this. Because when I first started, I was like, who gonna hire Sister Girl from Elk Grove to be working on their productions, on their clothing? I'm like, because the reality to me, this was my reality, was all of the people who are doing alterations don't look like me. They're either Asian shops or Russian shops.
Right.
But I found out that if you are on top of your game, people don't care what color you look like. And let me say this to our community of constituents who look like us. It's very insulting to go to a business and ask for a hookup because you're insulting that person. If they're doing 100% or more, why would you do that to them? If you're a hairstylist, you would be insulted if someone said, "Oh, I want a weave for 20." But you're like, "Are you kidding me?" Pay that person what they're worth, and you're going to get it back in return. And so what I've learned about being a businesswoman, as a Black businesswoman, as people of color, we either fail miserably or we succeed madly. And the reason why we fail miserably is because we're doing the hookup and we're not 100% committed to what we are considering our craft or our business. Being on time.
You know why we do the hookups? We want to try to get business.
But that's not it. You have that. It's not about getting the business, it's about growing the margin.
Right. But what I'm saying is because we don't know our numbers, we giving all these hookups out. Next thing you know, we ain't paying all our taxes. And that's a whole nother podcast. But listen.
No, but it's more than that, Jenny. It's more than that. It's not knowing the numbers. It's just this. It's being afraid of what someone else is going to say that looks like you, right? Oh, you're too expensive. That's not fair. Like when I first started, they're like, "You do how much?" And I'm not even saying our community in general, but other people. But I'm like, but check it out. Nordstrom sells a white T-shirt. Walmart sells a white T-shirt. It don't take 20 Walmarts to make one Nordstrom sell, right? I mean, the margin is different. So I'm like, I want the Nordstrom clientele. That's fine. And I charge the Nordstrom price so I can have the Nordstrom clientele. But I'm just saying, whatever your craft is, do not sell yourself short. Do not shortchange you. You will
Wow.
find the demographic that wants to do business with you if you do business very well. If you're honorable
Thank
to
you.
whatever your craft is. You don't need a discount. You don't need to hook up. There are headaches
Wow.
anyway, but
There's headaches with hookups. Trust
yeah.
me.
But if
So,
you're above board and you do great work,
uh-huh.
good work, excellent work, your clientele is going to find you, and you don't need a discount. So when Ray Ray and Pookie come, you'll be like, I'm not the one for you.
We're gonna end it on that
That
note.
sounds good.
That was fabulous. I really appreciate you joining
Thanks.
me today on this show. We got a lot from this show. I'm gonna leave some notes and kind of give some wrap ups of some things that we learned here in this show. But I'd like to thank you, Ms. Jackson, for joining us on this show today. And I want to wish you great success.
Thank you.
You're a woman of faith, so you stepped out on faith. Anybody that starts their own business is stepping
Who
out on
you
faith
telling?
anyway. But if you don't have
That's
faith, you'll get faith, right?
instantly.
Instant faith, right? So we appreciate your energy today. When you told me, hey, I want to be face to face, I love that because people want to see you. They want to be able to connect with you. I do have some people that's already booked the show. They said, oh, I don't want to be on camera. I said, okay. I said, but you're going to be able to connect with your audience a lot better when you just come on and you just be
Visibility is
be real.
credibility. Visibility is credibility.
So thank you for joining us on the show today. All of our visitors to the show, this is your first time, please click subscribe on the show. We're trying to grow. If you're trying to find out where to connect your Black dollars to Black professionals that's trying to do this thing and trying to do this thing right, make sure you continue to tune into our show, like, subscribe, find us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, and find our store, Shop Black Business Podcast. That's going to be a full-blown store that you'll be able to find the podcast guests on there. You won't be able to purchase from there, but it'll be a directory where you can kind of find them and you can even listen to their podcast, hear what they had to say. And from there, you'll be able to, it'll take you to their website and you'll be able to transact business with them from there and from there. So I'm your host, Jenny Jones. Stay connected, stay peaceful, love all. Take care. Goodbye for now.